This is Discovery, a program where you can discover the meaning and the message of the Bible. Hello and welcome to Discovery. This time we start an exciting new series, discovering the Old Testament book of Daniel, with our speaker Derek Lindley. Among all the Bible characters, Daniel stands out as someone who was strong and steadfast in character and whose faith, though tested to the limit, remained firm. God granted him to learn things about future events which were to take place in his lifetime and even beyond, even into our day. So stay with us as Derek looks into Daniel chapter 1.
We know more about Daniel the man than we do about any other prophet. At the beginning of the book, he is a teenager. At the end, an old man in his 80s. He's a man for all seasons, who stood in the gap, serving one pagan ruler after another as a model of integrity, a testament to God's sovereignty on the world stage. According to Dr. G. Campbell Morgan, the theme of the book is the persistent government of God in the government of the world. The book of Daniel is God's blueprint for Bible prophecy and the key to understanding other scriptures. In the Olivet Discourse, Jesus quoted only from Daniel. The book of Revelation is an enigma without the book of Daniel, and Paul's man of sin needs Daniel's account for amplification and clarification. In short, Daniel gives us the skeleton of prophecy on which all prophecy is placed. The image of Nebuchadnezzar's dream, chapter 2, and the beasts, chapter 7, are the backbone of prophecy. The 70 weeks, chapter 9, are the ribs which fit into their proper place. Here's some background. In 605 BC, Jerusalem fell to the Babylonians, and amongst the many captives deported to Babylon were Daniel and his 3 friends. They were enrolled in a liberal arts program, a 3-year crash course to indoctrinate them into the Babylonian culture. The selected young men were A-star students without any physical defect, handsome and showing aptitude for every kind of learning, well-informed, quick to understand, and qualified to serve in the king's palace. Chapter 1, verse 4. They had to learn the Babylonian language, and their names were changed. Daniel was renamed Belteshazzar, which means worshipper of Baal. Hananiah was to be called Shadrach, which is a name linked to the Babylonian moon god. Mishael became Meshach, which means who is like the moon god. And Azariah was to be known as Abednego, or servant of the Babylonian god of wisdom, Nego. The pagan world may try to slap another label on the child of God, but God knows his children, and his name is written in their hearts and on their lives. The pressure to conform was intense. The cuisine they were offered was not kosher. It had been offered to pagan demon gods, and a diet of unclean animals was against the Mosaic law. So Daniel, chapter 1, verse 8, resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine. He resolved to remain clean in an unclean world. In fact, he suggests a compromise, a 10-day trial whereby he and his 3 friends would be given nothing but vegetables to eat and water to drink, and then, he suggested, their appearance should be compared with that of the young men who eat the royal food. God honours those who honour him, and at the end of the trial they looked healthier and better nourished than any of the others. The book of Daniel is a testimony to the universal sovereignty of God. Daniel answers the ultimate question, who will rule the world? Notice in chapter 1, verse 2, that the captivity was God's idea. We read, "The Lord delivered Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into Nebuchadnezzar's hand." We read in chapter 1, verse 9, God had caused the official to show favour and sympathy to Daniel, so the 10-day experiment was allowed to go ahead. We read in chapter 1, verse 17, "To these 4 young men God gave knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning, and Daniel could understand visions and dreams of all kinds." As Charles Swindoll comments, although the Jewish captives were living under the shadow of divine discipline, God's hand was moving silently in the thoughts and feelings of the Jews and non-Jews, changing attitudes, affecting decisions, and altering history. Daniel and his friends in chapter 1, verse 20, graduated with first-class honours in their finals before Nebuchadnezzar, 10 times better than any of their colleagues. Never forget that Nebuchadnezzar was a cruel tyrant, the Hitler of the ancient world. I reckon life didn't turn out the way Daniel expected when he was a boy. He became a prisoner of war, taken off to spend the rest of his life in a foreign land. His home was bulldozed by a pagan army, the temple desecrated. He was stripped of his birth name, Daniel, which means the Lord will judge, and is renamed Belteshazzar, after the name of Nebuchadnezzar's pagan god. He had to speak a strange language. What do you do when you end up where you never expected to be? Babylon is where you find yourself when you feel cut off from the life you dreamed of and your fears seem bigger than your faith. The message of Daniel is, hold fast to God and you'll discover he still closes the mouths of lions, protects from the flames, delivers from mad kings, and shows up in power. Dare to be a Daniel, and resolve not to defile yourself. As Warren W. Wiersbe wrote, instead of bending and blending like a reed shaken by the wind, he stood like a mighty oak rooted in the Lord and defying the storms of change that raged about him. Next time we'll look into Daniel chapter 2 and see how God gave Daniel wisdom, courage and power in what was a dangerous and difficult situation.